Welcome to this episode of Mythology Time, where we will be discussing the king, the originator, and the god himself of love. I'm talking about none other than Cupid. One of the first mentions of a Cupid-like figure within history stems from what is believed to be his Greek counterpart, Eros, around 700 BC. During this time, Hesiod described Eros in Theogony as one of the primeval cosmogonic deities born of the world egg. He is armed with a bow and a quiver filled with golden arrows to arouse desire and leaden arrows to ignite aversion. This differs from our modern interpretation of Cupid, as presently he is only viewed with the ability to spread love, rather than possessing the ability to spread both love and disgust with his arrows. Within Greek theology, it is believed that Eros struck at the hearts of both gods and mortals, as he took pleasure in playing with the emotions of both. His later depictions in Roman mythology depict Cupid as being the son of Mercury, the winged messenger of the gods, and Venus, the god of love. Like Greek mythology, Roman mythology depicts Cupid as playing a part in the love life of mortals and gods. Although some literature portrayed Cupid as callous and careless, he was generally viewed as beneficial on an account of the happiness he imparted on couples. Throughout the pantheons and depictions of Cupid within mythology, his appearance also seems to differ. Within the Greek pantheon, in ancient vase paintings, Eros was typically depicted as a handsome young man with wings, or sometimes as a winged child. Typically with the depictions of Eros, sculptors preferred the image of the bow-armed handsome youth, while mosaic artists favored the figure of a winged plump baby. Within Eros' hands, he would typically possess his signature bow and arrow, or a flaming torch, to represent the passion he ignites within young lovers. If not depicted with his torch, or bow and arrow, he would often possess other symbols of love in hand, such as a hare, sash, roses, dolphins, or sparrows. These animals and items were also thought to be sacred to Eros, as they symbolized his playfulness and beauty, and the arousal he could imbue within young lovers. Eros was also sparingly depicted as being blindfolded, to represent the blindness of love, and the concept that love does not discriminate. At times when Eros was depicted as a handsome young man, he would also be displayed with golden wings and golden armor. While this was not a typical depiction of Eros, it was thought the color gold represented the precious and radiant nature of love itself, while one could argue that the armor itself represented the hardships and battles that can come from love. While his Roman counterpart, Cupid, was more largely depicted as the mischievous winged child that we are more familiar with, it has been theorized that these two depictions of Cupid and Eros represent our interpretation of love. His depiction as a youthful young man, embodying the essence of the passion of love, while his appearance of a young winged child represents the innocence of love itself. As one can see, when it comes to both Eros and Cupid, their appearances held great symbolism for the human interpretations of love, whether they be good or bad. Now we've discussed both the origins and appearances of Cupid, but what about his powers? As one can imagine from Cupid's present-day appearance, he has the ability to shoot golden arrows that induce love at first sight. And as previously stated, these abilities work on both mortals and gods. While some mock the ability to induce love, a wise man will recognize the dangers that can come from the ability to manipulate one's intense emotions. It is also imperative to note that if one is drawing from the mythos of Eros, it was not just the ability to induce love with golden arrows that he possessed, but also the ability to induce disdain with his leaden arrows, providing Eros with the full spectrum of love and hatred to play with at his will. As a god of love, Cupid is also often depicted as being an empath, capable of feeling the emotions of others and at times capable of soothing intense emotions of anger and sadness. And as a god, he is also bestowed with immortality and with his wings the ability of flight. Depending on which mythos or iteration within media that you are familiar with, Cupid's abilities may be far more extensive or more restricted. Yet whatever iteration of Cupid you may come across, his core function is nearly always the manipulation of love, which is indeed a mighty power. Lastly, we will discuss arguably one of the most famous fables of Eros, and that would be the origins of his own love story. The fable would begin with that of Psyche, the youngest princess of three, who possessed such beauty that it was thought to rival that of the gods. So much so that the word was spread that her beauty surpassed even that of the goddess Aphrodite, drawing attention away from her temples. When Aphrodite was made aware that it was Psyche's beauty that drew attention away from her temples, she sought the aid of her son, Eros, to help her gain revenge on Psyche. Aphrodite desired for Eros to use his powers to force Psyche to fall in love with the vilest and most despicable creature that was ever to walk the earth. Eros, seeing his mother's distress, at first agreed to assist her in this plot. However, once he laid eyes on Psyche for himself, he felt his heart being pierced by one of his own arrows. Unbeknownst to Aphrodite, Psyche was not pleased with the way her looks incited others to treat her, as she only desired love, but due to her looks, it only incited lust within the hearts of the mortal men that would pursue her. And now that her two elder sisters had already been wed, it was all that she desired to find her own true love and share the same fate. Unsure of what to do with his daughter, who was incapable of finding love, the king consulted with the oracle of Delphi to ask Apollo for advice. Apollo decreed that Psyche should be brought to the summit of a mountain, where she would stay alone until her husband would come for her. Devastated at this, as he did not desire to part with his daughter, the king reluctantly agrees, as no mortal can defy that of the gods. Banished and alone, Psyche wanders the mountain summit until she hears a voice beckon to her. The voice leads her to a castle fit for a guard. While the voice does not reveal its face to her, through the luxuries of the castle, Psyche becomes well taken care of. The only time the presence of the voice would reveal itself to her was in the dead of night, where the man would take up residence beside her. After the two had become betrothed, and many nights of Psyche never seeing her lover's face, she could not take the uncertainty of not knowing his appearance, even though his anonymity was the one rule he had in their relationship. So, one night, Psyche lit a lamp, revealing Eros, a beautiful young man beside her. However, after a bit of oil from the lamp drops on Eros' face, he awakens and is furious at Psyche's betrayal and storms off out of the castle. Psyche chases after her husband, but is unable to follow him in the darkness. She can only hear his heartbroken voice stating, "Love cannot live without trust." This began Psyche's journey to win back her true love, seeking the aid of the gods. She realized no one would help her due to Aphrodite's jealousy, so Psyche boldly chooses to go directly to Aphrodite to seek her aid in winning back her son's love. Unbeknownst to Aphrodite, Psyche is already pregnant with Eros' child. So, Aphrodite provides Psyche with tasks that seemed impossible for a mortal to complete. However, Psyche's love for Eros proves to embolden her to complete these impossible tasks set by Aphrodite. When Eros is made aware of what his mother is doing to his love, he rescues her from his mother's tasks and presents Psyche to the other gods. The ruler of the gods, Zeus, recognizes their relationship and orders Aphrodite to yield and make Psyche drink ambrosia so that she and Eros can marry each other and live amongst the gods. Now that you have been made familiar with the god of love, I beseech him on your behalf so that you all may have long and beautiful relationships of your own. If you enjoyed this episode of Mythology Time, please do not forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe.